The feeling of crossing a line in first place and having everyone cheering you on, it's exhilarating. And anyone that says otherwise is fibbing.
Your list of achievements in triathlon, Belinda, is phenomenal.
I can say this wholeheartedly. I never got into the sport of triathlon thinking I'm going to set the world on fire. I mean, I started as an age group athlete purely wanting to get my zest for activity.
What I see a lot with age group or amateur triathletes who work 40, 50 hours a week, children, we start out to be healthier. It becomes addictive. What's your thoughts on the added stress of triathlon training?
I look at these age group athletes demanding things of their body that's just not humanly possible to sustain. The one thing I tell them is be kind to yourselves.
It's topical, it's just happened, the Olympics.
Oh God, I love this. I love the Olympics, yeah.
From 5 years old to 52 years, you've given a lot. Is there one or two real pivotal moments?
This is so much stronger than this.
Hello everybody, and welcome back to this week's episode of the InnerFight podcast. My guest today is Belinda Granger. Belinda is a retired professional Australian triathlete, incredibly well known for her career in long distance triathlons, especially Ironman races. Over her career, she completed over 50 Ironman events, winning multiple times, including big races like Malaysia, Canada, which we talk about in the show, and also Korea. She's celebrated in many ways, but mainly for her insane resilience and longevity in the sport. And also, which she's very passionate about, her role as mentor and coach since she is retired from professional triathlon. She does some fantastic things within the sport and also within other sports. Her passion for triathlon, however, continues to this day. As she travels around the world, it's like the dream job, commentating on races, liaising. She's an athlete liaison officer and also as an ambassador for a number of triathlon brands. She has based on that, some amazing insights into the world of triathlon, and through her experiences as well, really delivers something quite unique. This is episode number 934 of the InnerFight podcast. No matter where you are in the world, thanks a lot for tuning in. Let's jump into today's show. Triathlon is, I'm always interested because running is hard, swimming is incredibly hard for a lot of people, and cycling is hard plus dangerous. Why do people start putting all three of them together? What's that all about?
You know, very interesting question. I can only speak on behalf of myself, and I go back, because I get asked this question quite often. Why did I get into the sport of triathlon? And I was always a sporty kid. I come from two very active parents. My dad played rugby union for years competitively. My mum was a diver.
Right.
And my dad loved running. So I think from the age of 5, I think we still have a picture of me as a 5-year-old doing my first fun run in Wollongong with my father. Wow. And I still even remember the words he said to me before the gun went off was, Belinda, 5 kilometres is a very long way. It's the longest run you've ever done. You need to learn to pace yourself. So go out nice and easy and come home strong. And of course, what do you think I did? As soon as that gun went off, I went off like a rocket ship, and he was dragging my sorry butt all the way to the finish line. But, you know, I learnt a lesson very early on. So going back to the story, I was from a very active background. I loved sport. I played every sport known to mankind during school. And I got to university and I got a bit lost, and I didn't know what sport I wanted to do. I'd done gymnastics for a majority of my teenage life. And I'd also done athletics, loved cross country, so I had good endurance as well. But it was a bit of a mismatch of all different sports, swam. And I got to university and I looked in the mirror one morning and I'd put on quite a bit of weight because I hadn't been doing anything routinely, so no sport, I hadn't picked a sport that I wanted to keep doing. And I looked in the mirror and I hated what I saw. I saw a person that wasn't me, wasn't fit, and I was no longer proud of the person I was looking at in the mirror.
Wow.
And I thought, Belinda, you have to find something that's going to fuel that fire again. I'd lost it. And some friends had told me about this new sport, because that's how old I am, this newish sport that was starting to take the world by storm, and it was triathlon. I thought, you know what, this could actually work, because how am I going to get bored? Yeah. It's not one sport. It's 3 different sports wrapped up into one beautiful parcel. And I started doing it purely for fun and purely to get myself fit again and to be proud of that person that I looked at in the mirror. And I think, like most people, you do one and it becomes contagious and you just cannot get enough, and it's an addiction.
Why is it, I was going to say, it becomes addictive? What do you think it is? I mean, you've got so much experience from the start to all your races to now you're working it in commentary. You must see motivation on a different level and addiction on a different level.
Yeah.
What makes it addictive? Because again, let's look at it. Like, there's 3 sports, you drown to start, you struggle to stay upright, and then you're literally in the bin for 10K, 20K, or literally, like, what is it that makes it so addictive for us?
I think firstly, there's definitely a certain personality that's drawn to the sport in the first place. Saying that, we're not all the same personality. Obviously, I've worked in the sport now for many, many years, and I work with an array of different personalities, particularly, with professional athletes, and some of them are quite different. But I think one or two personality traits are similar across all of us, in that we're competitive. And when I say competitive, not necessarily against others, but competitive within ourselves, and always striving to do the impossible. And I think with a lot of human beings that try crazy things, there is that one unique personality trait in that if someone says, oh, you can't do that, it's almost like, I'll show you. Secondly, and this is probably the thing that drew me to the sport in the first place, or at least kept me in the sport long enough for me to realise that I loved it, it's the social aspect of it. I'm a very social person. I love people. I love meeting new people. And triathlon, and the way that it was set up with triathlon clubs, and my very first triathlon club was the Bondi Triathlon Club, the Brats, down at Bondi Beach, and I still have some of the best memories ever from my time in that club, and they really set me up to becoming a professional athlete. So I think that was the other most important reason that I stayed in the sport is the social side. And all of my friends, even to this day now, are all triathletes.
Wow.
Involved in the sport in some capacity, whether they're still racing or on the other side like I am.
Yeah. So it's nothing about the Lycra?
No. To be honest, when I first
That's just middle-aged man life.
I didn't, and again, I started the sport when I was in my mid-20s, so I started quite late. And, when you're a mid-20-year-old, 25, 26-year-old, you're very conscious about your body. And I had always had huge quads from my days as a gymnast. I started doing gymnastics competitively at 10, finished at 17. So I was very quad dominant, still am. And to be honest, I hated my quads for many, many years. So quads in Lycra, big quads in Lycra, I didn't like it. Funny how you come full circle, and now I'm like, I love my quads, and they're the reason I've won so many races, but it took a long time. And now, of course, I love Lycra. I have good friends, Beth and Luke McKenzie, who have an amazing company, and I'm lucky enough to be always given lots of lovely Lycra. And now I look in the mirror now and I love my body in Lycra. So,
did you race in the era where you rode the bike in a swimsuit?
Yeah.
You must have. I've only this isn't in my notes.
Yes. I mean, I went through all phases, to be honest.
Yeah.
I think my era was still, it was before, well, it's not before aerodynamics, but obviously you look now and aerodynamics are everything. And you look what the men and women are wearing on the bike with the suits and the aero testing that goes into these suits, down to here and down to the knees. And I went through everything where, particularly because I raced a lot in Hawaii, and it was, less is best, because hot race, the less you wear, the better. And I remember one year rocking up to Kona in the smallest bra top you could ever find and tiny little costume bottoms, but then long socks, because that was the trend when the long socks came. Yeah. And I look back at these photos and think, my God, what was I thinking? So yes, I've been through quite a few trends, but I was in that era where you wore the two-piece bikini.
I think
Didn't
we should.
cover much of it.
We should give some respect to Faris Al Sultan. We actually had him on the podcast a few years ago because awesome. He was the last male I remember racing in Speedos.
Yep. And you think about how fast these guys went. I mean, Chris McCormack was another one. And imagine now, knowing what we know now with the aerodynamic testing that's been done and just what an advantage it is and the watts you say, particularly on the bike.
Yes.
It's madness.
It's crazy. Yeah. I actually saw Chris McCormack. He was in a race that I was doing recently, and I don't think he didn't look very good in bike outfits. So I don't think he'd look very good running around in Speedos these days.
I'm very close with Macca because I do actually do quite a bit of work for them
Phoenix.
With Phoenix, which honestly it is. If we ever talk about a job that is a passion job, that is it. Yeah. You're just thinking about it. I've got a camp coming up in Phuket in November.
Wow.
Phoenix camp, and honestly, it's one of the greatest weeks ever for the kids involved, but also for me.
Yeah.
And it's unreal. But Macca still trains, and he can still go out and kick my butt on a run, but he is carrying a few kilos, that's for sure.
You fast went pretty much to the top of the sport. I mean, your list, according to ChatGPT, as we were saying before, your list of achievements in triathlon, Belinda, is phenomenal. How did, having started this sport late and starting to win, and you obviously had a winning attitude from when you were 5 running, how did that feel?
I never, and I can say this wholeheartedly, I never got into the sport of triathlon thinking I'm going to set the world on fire. I mean, I started as an age group athlete purely wanting to get my zest for activity and being fit and healthy back. I'd lost it at university for the first couple of years. And I just wanted a sport that I could do, and being good at it never really was part of the equation until obviously after the first few races, I realised actually that I was getting better each race. I was getting better quite quickly. Like it was a significant jump each time.
Beginner gains.
And I swam as a child as well. Mum and Dad made sure I went through swim school and also competitive swimming up till I was around 15. So I did swim, which, as we know, is a huge advantage in the sport of triathlon. But it wasn't till probably I met Justin, who is now my husband, and we were friends for quite a few years before we started dating, and he was a very good junior triathlete. And we did quite a bit of training together in the Brat Club, and he actually said to me one day, you really should think about taking this sport a little bit more seriously because I think you could be very good at it. And I'm like, I don't know about that. And anyway, we sat down one day and he said, no, I think you should get yourself a coach, because I was doing all my own thing. Then I was just joining in with whatever training programs looked good at the time. And he said, no, you really should take this more seriously. And then we started dating, and he actually started coaching me at first. And before you know it, I got my pro license. And then it was a very quick, realised that obviously longer distance racing, I was a diesel engine, longer distance racing was better for me. And it was quite a quick rise from that point in time from when I decided to turn pro and race longer distance. And I found success pretty quickly. And I loved it, of course.
Why? What gave you the satisfaction?
I think I love today. I think back in my day, if I had done this podcast with you back in my day, I would have been a little careful with answering this question. Yeah. But I love today. You don't need to be careful anymore because, back then it's what a big ego she's got. But now, you own it. Yeah. I loved it because I loved winning, because I am probably one of the most competitive people I know. And the feeling of crossing a line in first place and having everyone cheering you on, everyone coming up afterwards and congratulating you, that feeling, it's exhilarating. And anyone that says otherwise is fibbing, because
absolutely, mate.
And there's nothing better. And also, so it's that external stimulation that you get from winning, but also internally knowing that you set yourself a goal to win a race, and then to be able to actually tick that box at the end, because you need a lot of things a lot of ducks to line up to make that happen. And so when it did happen, it was just, the feeling's indescribable. And it's probably one of the only things I miss about racing now, is just that feeling of crossing a line in first place, or it might not even be first, it might be top 5 if it's a world championship, depending on what the race is. Setting a new time, you might have gone to a race saying, I really want to go. One of the big ones for me was going to challenge Roth one year and breaking 9 hours. Wow. And so and the year I broke 9 hours, I think I only got 4th or 5th, so I didn't even win, but I broke 9 hours, and it's just nailing a goal. It's just, there's no feeling like it.
Do you get, obviously you spend a lot of time in the sport now, and we'll talk about that later, but you must get a similar feeling or vibes when you see athletes, because you're at the finish line and you're close with these guys. You know a lot of them personally. You commentate on the race. You interact with them. You're not your traditional commentator that just is in the sort of media box. You're close with.
I live and breathe.
You live and breathe it. You must get that, like a little bit of that buzz when you see them cross the line.
Yeah, you've nailed it. And I try and, every now and again I try and separate myself from it. I can't do it. It's not in my DNA to do so. These athletes are my babies. I mean, I don't have kids myself. These are all my kids. Yeah. And I can give you a really perfect story of the last time that this happened. It happens every race, but this was a significant moment. There's an athlete called Carl Smith. He's from New Zealand. I've known him for quite some time now. Young athlete that I know is insanely talented. He's brilliant. And he had a little run of bad luck. He had some bad luck with his health. And finally, he got himself back on track. And he came to our race this year in Šamarin, Slovakia, the championship. And he came there wanting to win. It was win or nothing because, as I said, he'd had so many bad races and a lot of bad luck the year before. He really had set himself a goal to come to this race and nail it. And I was commentating, of course. And long story short, he absolutely nailed it. And, I've got to try and keep control and I just want to go nuts. And I just want to be down on the finish line. And anyway, I remember the race had finished and I'd finished it. We'd wrapped up the show and I beelined it down to the finish line because I knew he'd be down there somewhere and he was getting a massage. And I remember just going up to him and grabbing him by the shoulders and we both just screamed like, wow. Did it! And the look in both of our faces because I wanted him to win this race as much as he wanted him to win the race because it just, sometimes I knew he needed that one race, that one freaking race to just get him back on track. Yeah. And look what he's done since. Yeah. I mean, unbelievable. He's unreal. So, and I remember I had tears in my eyes down the finish line and it wasn't a world championship. But for him personally, I think it was just that race he needed to get him back to where we know he needs to be or where he deserves to be, where we know he's capable of being. But that happens every race. I mean, there's always an athlete that I was just talking to you before about Daniel Bakkegaard, when he crashed in Roth and when that call came through to the booth, I'm like, I just wanted to go and find him and hug him. But, you've got to hold it together because you're on camera and Someone who articulates that really well is the Mike Riley. Yes, he loves it. Finding My Voice. I remember reading his book and a few years back and literally feeling the same feeling that I get when you explain that and it's not just the pro athletes, it's every athlete has their story. Absolutely. And every athlete's a pro in their own way. Yep. And it means so much to people, this sport. Well, particularly when you get into the longer distances, short course is a little bit different because you have one bad race, you dust yourself off and you can either go again next weekend or the weekend after that. Yeah. You can't do that with full distance racing, with the long distance racing. If a race doesn't work out for whatever reason, it's not like you can jump on well, there are a handful of athletes like Els Visser, for example, who can do that. But that's not the norm. And for most, and particularly the men, because they don't seem to be able to back up as well as the women, it's another couple of months or so before they get to do it again. And it can be soul destroying. I remember my very first Ironman was Ironman Australia when it was back in Foster. And I'll be honest, I got a little bit too cocky. I went in all guns blazing, thinking I was going to set the world on fire for my very first race, instead of taking it hour by hour, just going in with a fairly broad, idea of how I was going to go. But no, I was going there to win it, and I was going to set this time, and I was going to do this and this. And then, of course, I got a flat tire. And I'd never changed. This is when we used to glue the tyres on single. I'd never changed one before because I used high pressures when I trained. And I'd done everything else meticulously. Everything else, the training, everything else was done to perfection. But I'd never changed this type of tyre before. And I couldn't get the bloody thing off. And I stood on the side of the road for 15 minutes crying like a baby because I thought this is my race over at about the 80K mark of the ride. And I ended up fixing it in the end, but I lost a lot of time. I was way back in the back of the field with the age group athletes. It was soul destroying. And I didn't end up finishing that white day. I pulled out on the run because I blew myself to smithereens trying to make up the time.
Back on.
And I could look at that race as an absolute failure, but you know what? It was the greatest lesson I ever learned, because I never went into another race, even when I was at my best, with that sort of cocky attitude that I'm just going to smash everyone here. So, you know, I learned a shitty lesson very early on, but looking back in hindsight, it was the best lesson I've ever learned.
You started triathlon to cure a image that you had, or to make yourself happier about your physique. And it's quite interesting, because I think that's a point that a lot of people start. You know, I don't feel well. The barrier to entry in these things in triathlon is actually quite low, because most people can run, I've made it look hard earlier, but most people can run, swim and bike.
Yeah.
You get into it, but then the dynamic changes, because now it's feeding a lot of it, your ego, for your competitive side, and it becomes a job, and things change when it's, I don't know, maybe you didn't ever feel that you had to race, but if you didn't, because then it became, and it is your identity, right? Yeah, Triathlon's your identity.
Absolutely, 100%.
I'm interested to maybe hear like how it, because if we go to the start, it's my weight loss pill, but now it's my life.
Yep.
That must have been interesting from a mindset standpoint.
Yeah, it was. And definitely when I first started, there is no if, buts or maybes. I was unhappy with the way I looked. It wasn't even just a physical thing. I was unhappy with the way I felt. I'd always been a fit and active child, teenager, and all of a sudden, I didn't feel fit and active. I didn't feel like I was in control of me anymore. And that was a physical, mental, and emotional feeling. But absolutely, the easiest thing to quantify is when you look in the mirror and you don't like what you're seeing physically. And I think particularly as females, it's a big deal when you're that age, anywhere from 20 to mid-30s. I think once you get into your 40s, and now of course me in your 50s, you become a little wiser and you realize that that doesn't define you. But it's very, very difficult to explain this to young women. Add in now, which I didn't have back then, social media, phones, Instagram, it being shoved in your face every second of the bloody day. I don't even know how difficult it would be to be a teenager / young adult navigating themselves through life right now. It would be awful.
Do you see that like struggle in triathlon? Endurance sports generally have a little bit older athletes, but they're also coming, aren't they? Because we're, the 35-year-olds, social media is social media, and that's when you're supposed to be getting good at endurance. Yeah. Are you seeing it a lot in the sport?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely a lot. And image issues and eating disorders are still exceptionally prevalent in all sports, but I'm talking triathlon obviously, and it's not just women, men as well. And it's hard because it is a sport that requires you to wear very little clothing. When you go swimming, you're in swimmers training, and then Lycra, very fitted clothing all the time. And I still think that there are a lot of young athletes, brilliant athletes, that are driven by what they see when they look at themselves in the mirror. And it's sad because as a 53-year-old, sorry, I keep saying 52. I keep cutting the year off.
We'll keep you 52, right? It's all good.
I just think, if only I could just shake them and say, you know what, when you get to my age, you realise it's the least important thing. Yeah, I'd be lying if I sat here and told you that I don't watch what I eat, that I still train every day because I want to stay in shape. I want to.
You want to look good.
I want to look good. I don't do it for others. Now, that's probably the difference. I absolutely do it for me. So, if someone gives me a compliment, Belinda, you still look so fit. Yes, I like it and it's nice.
Yeah.
But it's not the be all end all. Yeah. It's me looking in the mirror and going, you know what, Belinda? You look really good in this bikini. Good for you. Yeah. That's what's more important.
But isn't that the journey of life?
Yeah, of course.
Don't we have to go through it?
Of course it is. Yeah. I just wish I could explain it to a lot of younger women to save them a little bit of heartache. But you're right, it is part of the journey that each and every individual needs to go through to get to where I am now.
Because I mean, your journey's like that. You're at university, you look in the mirror, I feel shit, I look shit, this is shit, I'm going to change it. You become a professional triathlete and you do great things in the sport, and you're one of a very few, and that's for a number of reasons. But then, at the back end of your career, it's easy to reflect and say it. But it's almost like maybe that's the passage. I want to ask you, because what I see a lot with both age group or amateur triathletes and pro triathletes, we start out to be healthier. It becomes addictive. Long course racing takes a long time to get over and takes a number of hours to train for. We're training for it, or we're seeing people train for it, and the main population is not the pros, it's the age groupers who work 40, 50 hours a week, children. What's your thoughts on the added stress of triathlon training, travel, into what's becoming an increasingly stressful life?
No, I 100% agree. I look back now, and obviously I started my career as an age group athlete. I taught full-time, so I was a full-time phys ed teacher. That's what I did at university. And I taught for 12 years. So I had to fit, I was one of those age group athletes that had to get up at 4:30 in the morning, 5 o'clock swim squad, work 9 or 8:30 till 3:30, go home, train in the afternoons, and then the bulk of the training was done on the weekends. And so, people say, oh, you give up your social life, but that was my social life. So yes, definitely very, very difficult. Once I turned pro and I was able to train full time, much easier to fit everything in. I look back now and I don't know how I did it as an age group athlete, to be honest. I think, and I didn't have kids to look after as well, so you've got to add that extra bit. And I think that's why sometimes we need to be a little bit kinder to ourselves. I look at these age group athletes demanding things of their body that's just not humanly possible to sustain. And I always say to some, because I obviously, even though I work within the pro realms of the sport, I hang around age group athletes all the time. And the one thing I tell them is be kind to yourselves, because you're demanding things of your body that's just not normal. It really isn't. It's a little bit like when people say, oh, what diet should I go on? And I hate that word. And I still go back, and there's all these, you've seen all the fads, all the bits from vegetarian to just protein to starve yourself for half the day. It kills me. I still go back to the oldest one of all, everything in moderation. And I think if we can use that across every facet of our lives, everything in moderation. Not too little, not too much. And if we just stick to that, I think that we can, then we're not demanding too much of our bodies, we're not putting too much strain on our immune systems. Back when you're young, when you get sick, I'll be fine, I'm young, I'll get over it, and you pulverize your body through sickness, and it's not till you're older you realize the damage it's done. Getting sick, getting a cold is your body's way of telling you, quite nicely, please stop.
But can we create the moments we were talking about before of insane performance, which brings with it incredible emotion and sense of achievement, through just training moderately? Would you still get those? I think so. I'm not saying be average. So this is where people get a little bit mixed up. When I say everything in moderation, that's not saying be average. It's just when you map out your week. Justin, my husband, coaches, and I watch him when he's got different athletes, and obviously he's got all age group athletes with a different amount of time that they've got to spend training, depending on what job they've got. And he works with that, and it's about looking at, let's say the athlete says, I have got literally 12 hours a week to give to training. That's it. And then it's about utilizing those 12 hours as efficiently as possible, getting the most out of yourselves. So if that means giving up a session, which might be one of your favorite sessions, it might be the coffee session where you doodle down the road, grab a coffee, doodle back. But are you getting the most out of that? What you need out of that session? Maybe you are, because maybe it's the one session you need that keeps you mentally in the game. That's something you have to decide with yourself and your coach. But when I talk about moderation, it's making sure that you give enough time for family, for work, for you, and for training. It's not being average. Do you see that? And that's balance, right?
It is balance.
That's moderation.
Balance, yep.
Do you see that in pro athletes? Are they changing? Because I think the reason why I asked that, I think there was a time where, and maybe it's a little bit brutal now with the Norwegian method, which we'll come to talk about a little bit later. I'm sure you've got some views on that. But it was like triathlon, endurance sport, more is better, and all the pro guys were...
I trained like that. I mean, it's old school.
Did you?
And I definitely believe it's dependent on the athlete.
Yeah.
I know with myself, and my old coach, Brett Sutton, said I'm a diesel engine. In fact, he's exact...
I actually didn't realise he was your coach.
Yeah, he was my coach for a long time. And he was... His exact expression of me, and you know, he meant this as a compliment. He said, "You're like an old German tank. You never break down. You just keep on going, and the more work I give you, the better you go. It's like an engine that just likes to keep on turning over."
But that's what he liked to do. He liked to find athletes that he could just give more to.
And you look at someone like Elzvisa right now. She's a perfect example of that.
Yeah.
She's able to back up. Time and time again, if you saw the training sessions she does right now, most people would have a small heart attack.
Yeah.
But when you don't know any different, when you change your mindset and you realise that your body can cope with that, it doesn't work for everyone. I know there are athletes that they try that they'd be injured, or they'd be exhausted, or their immune system would shut down and they would be sick. So it's not a method that suits everyone. Just like the Norwegian method is not a method that would suit everyone. I know for me personally, being a social person, I need social time. I need time out where I go to the coffee shops, where I sit and have a chat. I hang around athletes all the time now. I was in Girona early this year. A lot of the pro athletes are there, and they still have their times where they will go to the coffee shop and they will sit and they will have that time out.
Nice.
And there are coaches but that's not a great use of their time. They should be home lying in bed resting for the next session. But if that doesn't make them happy mentally, then, you know, again, it goes back to that balance and that moderation and what feeds that athlete. And so when they go to their next session, they are ready to hit it and give it everything.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because there's a lot of change. There's a lot of change in the world. We mentioned phones. Mental health is a lot more prevalent in the late 90s, early 2000s in triathlon. There wasn't. It was train.
Loved it.
Or just train. Just put more on. No feelings. No. And it's the same in cycling, in all endurance sports. And this is how they got good. What we now see is people are equally as good, but we're having conversations like that. Like, you need the time to connect with people in the coffee shop. That's important. You don't need to be sleeping if you're not training. I mean, that was it, wasn't it? If you're not training, get off your legs. You know.
Go back to your apartment. I mean, when I trained in liaison in Switzerland with Brett, every morning we start the session, meet at the pool at 7, we would swim, he would tell us what we're doing for the day. In between sessions, we would be at home resting, preparing mentally for the next session. And I think you can still have periods of time throughout the year where that is what you do, eat, sleep, train, repeat. I'm not saying that's, you know, and that's why we have training camps.
Sure.
And I used to love the simple life. So I would go away on these training camps for 2 months, and that would be my life. And I could deal with it because I knew it was only for a couple of months. And then I knew once I came home or once I went to a race, I would get that social feed that I needed. But I did like that simple life. And I was lucky enough that I got to do it with my husband. I don't know what it would have been like if I was on my own, but having my husband, we had our simple life. We had our little apartment in the mountain, and he would go and do his session, I'd go and do mine. We'd meet back at home, we'd chill. So
do you think he was your therapist?
Yeah, definitely. I still to this day he's my therapist. Just ask him.
But I mean, I've never met Brett Sutton. Obviously, you spend enough time in endurance, you hear a lot, you learn a lot, and, you know, it's whatever. But he strikes me as someone, this is the way, like you say, this is what we're doing today, bang, you do it, come back at this time, bang, you do it. You had Justin as your therapist. Are you seeing more athletes, be it age groupers or the pros, that actually have someone outside of a coach, someone that's able to just listen to them? Because I imagine, you might correct me if I'm wrong, but if you turned around to Brett Sutton and started whinging a bit,
oh my God,
it wouldn't go well, would it?
No.
But Justin listened to it all day and all night if he had to.
Yeah. The thing with Sutto too, though, he had this innate, and he still has it to this day, this innate ability that he would be standing at the pool right down one end and he'd watch us all walk in, and, you know, we had to be there at 7. He could almost tell from our body language. We didn't need to tell him that we were tired.
Right.
And I know this sounds ridiculous, but I'm telling you it was true. And we would walk down pool deck and he would already know whether we were going to do an easy session and go home and take the rest of the day off, or whether he was going to give us a 3-session day. And you wouldn't know it. You wouldn't even see it. And you'd get to the edge of the pool and you'd be mentally prepared to have a big day in the saddle, you know, run off the bike. And he'd say, oh, Belinda, all right, get in the pool. You're just doing 2K today and then you're going to go home and you can go for a nice easy hike up the mountain. Take the day off. I want you to relax. And you'd be like, what the No, I'm feeling good. I want to go. I'm ready to go. He goes, you're doing 2K and then you're going home. And you'd be like, okay. Anyway, you do it and you'd be cursing his name all day because you'd be like, because you wanted to be out there training with everyone else. Yeah. That's the mindset that he created, that you wanted to get out there and train. And you'd go home, you'd take the day off, you'd curse his name 500 times, but you would come back to the pool the next day and you would go through the motions. But then the next day after that, you would be on absolute fire and you'd be thinking, shit, he was right. I just needed that one little day to take it easy. And then 2 days later, when you're doing 3800s down on the track and you are absolutely feeling like you're the most invincible person under the sun. And he has this insane ability to be able to pick it before you can. And I never got sick. And I can absolutely say this, I never got sick and I never got injured. The only injury I ever had with Brett Sutton was I had endofibrosis of the external iliac artery, which is not an injury per se, had nothing to do with anything he did. It was something that was always going to happen, you know, when your artery kinks. And that was just a time thing. And that's literally the only time out I ever had in the whole time I was with Soto. I never got injured.
So he knew.
He knew with me. It was unbelievable. It's the same with Els Visser now. I look at Els Visser and I sat and chatted to Els. You know, she did obviously challenge Roth, had a great race there, backed it up the next weekend and raced. And yeah, went one better, got second. She did back-to-back full distance races and actually got better in the second race and walked away from that fine. And he's back training again now like nothing happened. So yeah, there's a few athletes out there that are just able to do that. For the majority, yeah, you know. But again, Soto still, depending on the athlete, would set them different sessions. But it was nice to go have Justin there just to hear me whinge every now and again. I didn't whinge a lot, but it was nice to have him there just to hear me out.
It's topical. It's just happened. The Olympics.
Oh, God, I love it.
Alex Yee.
I love the Olympics, yeah.
How was that race?
Unreal. It was unreal.
What was it in that last kilometre?
I wish there was I had to put a camera on our house at home watching it, because Hayden Wilde is a very good friend of mine. I absolutely adore him. He's just such a beautiful human being, both on and, I mean, obviously he's a spectacular athlete, but he's a magnificent human being. I love him. And his girlfriend, Hannah, they're just wonderful people. And I honestly thought that he had nailed the race. Like, we've seen him race many, many times against Alex Yee, and it's always ended in the same way. They run together, a kilometre to go or whatever it is to go, Yee starts to pull away and wins the race. And I honestly thought that Hayden, once he caught the group, and then obviously they come in together off the bike, and then Hayden decided to go, I thought, this is strategically brilliant. He's done it. He's found the spicy sauce that's going to get him.
Yeah.
And I literally had already sitting on the couch going, this is it. He's got gold. He's got gold. And then we all know what happened. And I was screaming. I actually started crying.
Really?
And it's nothing. I mean, Alex Yee is incredible. He deserves the gold. He's a brilliant athlete. He's the greatest short course athlete we've seen for quite some time. But I absolutely thought that Hayden had it. But again, to go through all those emotions while you're watching a race that doesn't even last 2 hours.
A hard day out.
And then, and the women's race was the same. And then the mixed relay, which I think is the greatest thing
it's very cool.
World Triathlon could have ever put into the sport.
Yeah, it's very cool.
Was just, it gave us everything that we knew it would. And to think that it was going to come down, those top 3 spots was going to come down to a photo finish, second and third, was ludicrous, but amazing.
I have to ask you, from a commentary standpoint, in that race, as an onlooker just watching the TV, there's very limited and this was actually throughout the Olympics, and it's also in cycling, it drives me nuts. There's very limited information for the viewers.
Yeah.
Like, okay, we saw the distance, we saw 15 seconds, it's 20 seconds, the French are coming, we saw that. But maybe it's because I love the sport. How fast are they running? What's really happening? Like, you guys have this knowledge of what they're feeling and what's going on, the pace. Like, why is that? I don't know if you see it like this, but it's not communicated a lot. It's definitely not communicated in cycling at the moment.
No.
And that's because they're all dinosaurs in cycling.
And I think to some degree, I think live commentary is still so far behind technology.
Right.
And it is frustrating. And obviously working on the other side, we have our production meetings leading into a big event. And we know, we've got GPSs on every athlete. Obviously now we've got Race Ranger in sport. We're going to have this graphic, and they show you. We go through all the graphics that are going to be shown on race day. We get fired up, and we're going to show this person's heart rate.
Yeah.
We're going to show the watts that they're pushing, the distance behind. Watts, for example, Sam Long, what wattage he needs to push, what kilometre pace he needs to go for him to catch. So it is there.
Right.
Then race day comes along, and for whatever effing reason, it doesn't work.
Goes out the window.
It goes out the window, and you're like, but what about this graphic? Why didn't we show this graphic? What happened to this? They're like, It just didn't work on the day. And it's infuriating.
Because that would make it so much. I mean, as I say, I think I'm biased because I want to know what he's like. I want to know what those guys were running in the last 1K.
Athletics. Let's not even talk about triathlon. Athletics, which I think even if you aren't even a sporty person, everyone loves watching the athletics.
Yeah.
Watching the men and the women run the 100 metres. I want to know their kilometre per hour speed.
Of course you do.
I mean, I don't think anyone has any, like the layman just sitting on the couch has no idea what these men and women are actually
the best
running.
thing was for Kipchoge's 2-hour marathon. What was it? Go to the gym, put the treadmill as fast as it can, and that's the pace he's running because he's obviously running 21 Ks an hour.
Make it that simple.
So it's that simple,
Chuck it up to 24K an hour and see how long you can run before you get blown off the back. I mean, for me, it'd be about. I couldn't. I don't think I'd even be able to do it.
You couldn't get up to it.
And and you think about. Even with that women's marathon, was the greatest marathon, male or female, that we have ever seen.
100%.
And the argy-bargy there at the end, like they were running a 1,500 metre track race, I would have loved to have known what those last few kilometre, like the kilometre.
It would have been amazing.
Were. And so, yes, I still think we've got a long way to go.
Yeah.
It would be unreal, but...
Will it get there though, do you think? Like, you say the technology's there. Is it, until Sean Kelly stops commentating on the Tour de France and various races, it'll never get there. But, you've been in the sport, you understand the sport, you love the tech as well, or you love the pace as well. Maybe you're of an era that leads it. Are we close?
It's interesting because if my husband was here now, he'd be laughing that you just said I love the tech because he thinks I'm the most technologically backward person.
Well, you say they show it to you.
I get a new phone and I say, okay, fix it up for me. But what I would love, and this is why I think when you pick a team for commentary, you make sure first and foremost you have to have an amazing anchor. To me, and they don't necessarily need to know every single facet of the sport. They need to know the sport to some degree, but you need an amazing anchor that can steer the ship. And then it's good to have a commentator that evokes the passion, and that's what I probably like to think that's my strength, that I know about. I can give audience out there details about the athletes, what makes that particular athlete tick, who they are, so that they actually form a bond with the athlete that we're watching on screen. That's probably my forte.
Yeah.
And then have another person who's there purely because they are technologically right on the ball.
They're an analyst.
They're an analyst, exactly. Yeah. And they know exactly, when we have the data, if it says, such and such is riding at 350 watts, wow, that's actually, at least a good 50 watts higher than this particular athlete should be doing. Are we going to see a massive explosion before the end of the bike? Make it interesting. And then I could be back, well, yes, okay, maybe this athlete's going over and above what they are physically capable of, but I know this person has such a big heart and will go literally drop dead. So that's what makes a great commentary team.
That would be so good, wouldn't it?
For me, personally.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah. Stay on watts, stay on cycling. Pogačar, 7 watts a kilo, 40 minutes, 400, he's 66 kilos, right? So that's 470 watts for over 40 minutes.
Unbelievable. But you know,
I won't ask you if you think he was cheating or not, but it's phenomenal.
It's funny that you say and bring up cheating, and obviously we've just had a latest thing in our sport with Thomas Rodriguez. And when I was an athlete, racing, I would be, definitely he's a cheat. He's a cheat, he's a druggie, for sure.
Wow.
Being on the other side now and having responsibility in what I say and what I do, and having to follow due process, I stay quiet a little bit more now. And unless, we have processes in place, they're not perfect. They never will be. But I must follow said process. So for me right now, Pogačar, he hasn't tested positive. So to me, he's probably just one of those outstanding, phenomenal athletes. What I love about him, though, and going back to what my strength is, he's such a character.
He is, right?
And every sport needs their own Pogačar. Really. He's funny. He's he loves an audience. He's an entertainer. He just happens to be bloody good at what he does as well. And we need athletes like that.
It's interesting because a client of mine, his son had leukemia 2 years ago. He's 8 or 9 years old, and one of my friends is good friends with Pogačar, and he got him to send a video.
Wow.
And I was like, would Armstrong have done that?
Exactly.
And I was like, maybe not.
Maybe not.
I
bet you Pogačar didn't think twice about it.
Didn't even think. He actually did it the first time in Slovenian, because my friend's Slovenian as well, and he did it in Slovenian. And then he's like, oh, mate, the kid's actually, the boy's name is Oscar. He goes, Oscar's actually English. And he redid it,
so redid it in English,
and sent it again.
It's unreal. It's unreal.
Staying on cycling or moving from triathlon to cycling, can Christian win the Tour de France?
It's funny, when that was first brought out, and I think it was Jack Kelly that brought it out. And you know what, whenever Jack says something like that, you know that he's got first-hand information. He's not just making it up. But usually what he says is true. So when he said it, at first I'm thinking, surely you've got this wrong, Jack. You've got this wrong. But I think physiologically, when you hear the story, I'm sure you know the story of the way Christian got into the sport of triathlon. There was people came through the schools and were looking at athletes and testing them, and when they came across Christian, they were blown away by his VO2. And at the end of the day, he's that superior that I think as long as he can learn to ride a bike, and I don't say that in a nasty way, because let's be honest, the difference between triathletes riding bikes and cyclists riding bikes is chalk and cheese. Even when we look at triathletes that are exceptionally good bike riders, it's just next level, as it should be. These guys are on their bikes for hours and hours and hours a day. But could he do it? I wouldn't put anything past Christian, because he's an absolute freak, and he has that mindset that once he puts his mind to something and he's going to do it, he will get it done. Will he ever win the Tour de France?
Are you putting $100 on it, Belinda?
I think, can he do the Tour de France, and can he be good at it? I don't see why not.
What was the date? 2027?
Will he win? I don't know. I don't think so.
Hard.
No.
That's super hard. No. Let's go back to triathlon, and I know we have to tread a little bit carefully, and a lot of things the public don't really know. There's a lot of structural things with the Ironman brand. You obviously work a lot with the Challenge brand. Different races are owned by different people. And unfortunately, as sports grow, it becomes more of a business in a certain way. These things happen. So that's all okay. What I'm trying to figure out, because Kona was always the Mecca. Will it always be the Mecca of long course?
Look, I do work for Challenge Family. It is my full-time job. My full-time job is pro liaison with Challenge Family, and then of course I'm still a contractor. So then I have, I've obviously done some commentary for the PTO. I do some commentary for our events that we don't own, where the actual race will employ me to do that, and then I work for Phoenix as well. So I have my fingers in a whole heap of different pies, but the one constant is the sport of triathlon. And when I look at the sport of triathlon, The one thing that makes me so upset is just, you go to one triathlon, you've got this set of rules, you go to another triathlon that's run by another company, that's a different set of rules. It kills me, because at the end of the day, we all want the same thing, which is to grow our sport and to make our sport an incredible sport and to put it up on a world stage. And I just find that, more and more it is becoming business. I've got nothing against Ironman. I mean, I've been to some fantastic Ironman races. I raced, hundreds of Ironman races throughout my career, and had so many successes. And I know a lot of people that work for Ironman. But sometimes do they hit below the belt? Absolutely they do. And we're finding the same thing now with the PTO, with the T100 series. There's races that are going to clash with some of our races, some of our bigger races, and it disappoints me, because I wish we could all work together. And I know I'm living in a daydream, and people are going to listen to this and go, "Oh, yeah, Belinda, but that's it's business, and people want to make money." But I just think, but if we all work together to make our sport bigger, wouldn't we all be making money?
More money.
I just think sometimes we just keep hitting our head against a wall and thinking we're going to get a different outcome. At the end of the day, we're going to have a bloody head. It's the same thing.
But at the same time, we're showing that the sport is growing, and there is somehow room for different organisations.
There is. And I think it's about finding what your organisation, and it's funny because we know as Challenge Family, we don't have the funds or the financials that, say, Ironman have.
Yes.
And then obviously the PTO with the T100 series as a pro series. Amazing. And I absolutely love what the PTO are doing. There's no if, buts or maybes. It's been a game changer.
Yeah.
And Challenge Family, we've had to look at ourselves and say, well, what's our purpose?
Yeah.
I'm talking from a professional standpoint, but also as an age group standpoint. And I can tell you now with our team, and we only have a small core team, but you have never met a more passionate, and they're all in it for the right reason. Yeah. They all love the sport of triathlon. And it's like, well, what is our purpose? And for us, for the pros, we've decided that we are a really nice stepping stone for athletes that are starting out as professionals, don't quite know where they fit, or are still finding their feet. And so we're like a feeder system, like you have in surfing, or in a lot of other sports. So we're like a feeder system where pros can come within the safety of our races, make a name for themselves, and then move on. And we've found that we've already had this. Mathis Magirier, who's a Frenchman who won our world bonus. We have an interviewed Challenge Family world bonus. He won it last year. No one really knew who Mathis was outside of France. And we were a fantastic stepping stone for him. And now, of course, he's got a contract in the T100 series, and he's one of the best long distance athletes in the world. Wow. And we like to say, well, you know what? We gave him that platform, that stepping stone to get where he is now. And we think moving forward, that may be where we sit. Wow. In the general scheme of things. And with our age group athletes, it's all about family. You know, we still allow husbands and wives and kids to run down the finish chute with their family. And that's something that we pride ourselves on, because we want to be all inclusive. We want to include families, friends, kids, dogs, everything. So, it's just about defining who you are and where you fit in. And again, I think there's space for everyone. There really is.
Does it continue to grow? I don't know the actual growth rates, which maybe I should, but obviously through COVID, we saw more people get back into or take up endurance. Can you see it on this? I mean, it's in growth. Okay, you guys might be down a little bit, but then T100 comes in, and someone like one country doesn't want an Ironman event, but then another event comes. So generally, I'm seeing anyway, the growth is good.
It is.
Does it continue, do you think?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question, and you're dead right. It is dependent on where the countries. I think countries are growing at different rates. We have some of our races that we hit our heads against a brick wall. We don't know why they're not growing. They're an incredible event. I've been to these races. I've raced these races. I love them. We just can't get the numbers. Yet we've got another race coming up, a new race, challenge. A challenge race in Canada, and we had Quebec, a brand new one, Challenge Quebec, one weekend, and now we've got the next challenge race in Canada coming up. Sell out, 3,500 people. It's unbelievable.
Well, it's like Roth, isn't it? Really hard to get to. I walked 30K on the day of the race. It's hands down the best race I've ever been to.
Yeah.
So it's like,
challenge Roth. That's a different kettle of fish again.
Yeah.
I mean,
but it's not convenient.
No.
Nothing about that race is convenient. That's what I'm saying.
3 different
transitions. Like
different
nothing.
finish line area.
If you came to me with a race like that, small town, no accommodation, no airports, it shouldn't work. But hands down, I think no one in triathlon that has been to that race, and I've not been to Kona, but no one could say it's not one of the best. It's one of the best sporting events I've been to in my life.
Yeah, it's unreal. And I've obviously, I went there for the first time in 2004, and I think I've missed 2 years. That's it. One year of COVID, and then one other year, and I've been going every year since. And it's obviously a multitude of factors, the reason it works so well. At the core of that is the Bolsover family that I cannot say enough good things about. Obviously Felix, his mum Alice and Catherine, and they live and breathe triathlon. But in saying that, the love for the race is spread throughout the entire community, not just at Roth, all the surrounding areas. I've never ridden there and been told to get off the road. I've never had a scary experience with a car. It's just everyone loves the race. Locals want to talk to you about the race. Wow. And these are locals that have never done a triathlon in their life. The police love the race. They've got a man there now, Jonas Dijkman. I don't know if you know about him, but he's doing 120 iron distance races in a row. He's basically doing a Roth course 120 times in a row. Okay. He's up to, I think, 100 now or close to it. But he started before. Roth was the halfway mark, so it was the 60th. And he's been going every day since. I joined him for a couple of his runs. It's utter madness. Wow. But he's got the police now for the last lot all the way to the finish. He's got the police now closing roads for him, for the ride and for the run. That's how much it means. It's unbelievable, the support that they get. Cool. But yeah, I mean, you can talk about Roth, but like you said, unless you've been there and you've got to experience it firsthand, it's very difficult to even give it the credit that it deserves or to...
I remember in like 2012, athletes would come, I'm going to race Roth, and I'd look at it on the map and I'd be like, nah. And then last year we had a good excuse to go, and I was like, what was I even thinking?
It's insane. It's unreal. And I was literally just having a chat to Felix the other day, and we're going on holidays together in September, to Marrakesh together, and I can't wait. But he looked after me so incredibly well and really taught me loyalty within the sport. And I know this might not be one of the subjects that you're looking at, but for me, it's so important, loyalty within the sport and not just going where the dollars are. And it is something that I think athletes struggle with. And I don't blame them. I'm not having a go at any of them, because at the end of the day, it's a very short career and you have to make money. I mean, that's what professional athletes need to do. It needs to be financially viable. But I just wish that if athletes could realise that being loyal to a particular race can go a long way. And if I look at the relationship that Felix and I have, purely because I was loyal to that race, I raced it 10 years in a row. Wow. And what I continue to get from that race, even to this day, working on the other side. It's amazing. Take away the financial gains, which were phenomenal. Yeah. But the friendships that are going to last forever, an absolute lifetime. And you can't buy that. No amount of money can buy that. And I just wish there were athletes that could see that a little more and understand just how precious that is. It's not just in triathlon. At the end of your career.
It's not just in triathlon.
No, it's everywhere. I've put it in every sport, every facet of life, yes.
So let's bring it together. From 5 years old to 52 years old, this sport, this job, these people have given you you've given a lot. I think that's one thing that we have to salute you for. You've given a lot. We didn't go and list, but ChatGPT it, folks, and get the list of Belinda's achievements. It's phenomenal. Is there one or two real pivotal moments that always stay in your mind from the sport of triathlon?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, from a performance standpoint, the first year when I won Roth in 2005, because it changed. It basically changed. I became renowned throughout the world. And when I say that, it means a lot of sponsorship opportunities opened up after that. I signed a multi-year deal with Roth after that. Wow. So that was it was a turning point in my career, because I finally felt, after winning that race in 2005, that I could call myself a professional athlete. I felt like a professional athlete. Also, another significant moment was when I won Ironman Canada. And the reason I say that, and this one was in Penticton, because I set myself a goal to try and win Ironman Australia for years, and I was always beaten. Sian Welsh beat me one year. I came second. Laurie Bowden beat me several years. Lisa Bentley came back year after year after year. She decided that she loved Ironman Australia, and she beat me every single time. And I remember one year she beat me, and that race happened to be in April every year. And I went away to camp in liaison in Switzerland, and Sato could see I was depressed, because I really thought that I was going to win it that year. I thought this was the year I was going to win Ironman Australia. That's all I wanted to do. I didn't care about any other race. I just wanted to win Ironman Australia. Wow. She beat me again. And you could tell I was depressed about it, and it was just, I couldn't get over it. He said, he goes, I know what'll get you over it. You can go and do Ironman Canada this year, and you can give it back to her. And I'm like, are you insane? I'm not going to her own country and to get beaten again by her 2 times in a year. I said, don't be an idiot. That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. He goes, oh, Belinda, you're the stupid one here. You have no idea. He goes, you're going to Canada and you are going to beat her. So I went to Canada that year, and anyone that's never done Penticton, it's still to this day the most incredible, brilliant Ironman course in the world. Right. 1 lap swim, 1 lap bike, out and back marathon.
Wow.
Anyway, brilliant course. And I had a great swim, thrived on the bike, got off the bike with a massive lead, and I thought, here we go. Because I did the same thing every year on Ironman Australia. She still ran me down. She's brilliant. I mean, Lisa Bentley, she's a brilliant marathon runner. Anyway, we got to a point, and Paula Newby-Fraser at that stage was on the bike for the lead women. She was just making sure everyone was under control, and she came up to me with about 8 kilometres to go. And she said, we've just done the maths, and if you keep the pace you're going and Lisa keeps running the pace you're going, it's going to be a sprint finish on the finish line. Oh, God. And I remember looking at her, and I looked at her, and I just said, excuse my French, over my dead body, and I just took off. Long story short, I ended up beating her by, I don't know, maybe a couple of minutes. Wow. And I got back to camp, and Fred Sutton said to me, I told you so. He said, I hope you learn a good lesson. It's all about pressure. It's all about this. Had nothing to do with the physical. Yeah. It's all about believing in yourself, and you put so much pressure on yourself in your own country and failing your own people. When you go to Canada, no one expected you to win. Pressure's off your shoulders, and look what happens. You flourish. Amazing. So I learned a really important lesson that I took into the rest of my career as well. Amazing. that this is so much stronger than this. So yeah.
Thank you so much.
That was a very long-winded story, but
that was a great story. That was a great hour. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat.
I love it.
Everyone's going to love that.
Yeah, it's very cool. I mean, this sport, as I said, it gave me so much, and I think with the pro athletes now, one of the biggest things I give them, because I get a lot of pro athletes get down in the dumps saying, I'm injured, maybe it's not for me. I'm like, hang on to it for as long as you can, because you've got the whole rest of your life to be normal. Yeah. Hang on to this life of being a professional athlete for as long as you can, because it'll be the greatest years of your life. It really will. So, yeah.